Set? Okay. Okay, I'll call to order the October 22nd, 2019 regular board meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our mission statement is Learning for Life. Vision statement is Southgate Community Schools, the best choice for students and parents. That will entertain any revisions to the agenda.
Mr. President,
Mr. Green.
I would like to make a revision to under presentations to 1A, presentation for Mr. Jason Koopser.
Okay. Any other revisions tonight? Okay. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on the approved agenda.
I'd like to make an motion to approve the revisions for the agenda.
Sorry, okay. All right, I have a motion on the revised agenda, sorry. And then, yep.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes, and we have an agenda. Are there any citizens who'd like to speak tonight? Oh, yeah, we had, Dr. Pomponio made the motion on the agenda, and then, oh, we didn't have any support on it, so.
Oh, my
sorry.
God, that's right, because you,
Sorry, yep.
Okay.
Supported by Mr. Estheimer?
Thanks,
Okay,
Tim.
yep. All right, we'll call the vote again. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, now we have an agenda. Anyone who'd like to speak tonight? All right, seeing none, move on to presentations. And the first one is for Mr. Koopser.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Koopser, you meet me at the podium, please. My pleasure. Hey, bud. There was a few of us that all came in together, as you now know, and I feel like you've been living with me the last couple weeks because we can never hunt you down for this. But the board got together for your service for the 3 years you've been on the board. We appreciate everything you've done and all the expertise you brought us. So here's a memento for your time on the board. It says, presented to Jason Koopser, Southgate School Board, 2017-19. Thank you for your exceptional service to the children of Southgate. There you go, buddy.
Thank you very much. I'll just talk for just a moment. Just want to say thank you again. Did you get your shot? Just it's such a pleasure working with everyone, and an honor to be able to serve the community in the district, and the fact that Sean's such a great replacement as well, to be able to serve as well with the group. So just thank you. Humbly appreciative, and I made a lot of friends, so thank you. Sorry.
That thing's cursed.
Yeah. Can't seem to get it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay. All right, our second presentation tonight is the 2018-2019 audit report from Yo and Yo.
Good evening, how are you?
How you doing?
Thanks for having me here tonight. I guess put the screen down. I think you also, did everybody get the copy of the graphs in their packet? I don't know if you guys did that or not. You did, okay.
If I did, it's,
I was saying earlier, usually the ROTC are here in this state.
We did.
You don't have the stiff necks there.
A bit bigger, maybe. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thanks for having me here tonight. If you have any questions on the report that you also received in your packet or on the graphs, please feel free to ask, and hopefully myself or Barb can answer them. First page is an audit overview. And we talked a little bit about the procedures that we do during our audit. We look at internal control testing and evaluation. We basically test the controls that you say that you have. Okay, that's one thing that we do. The other thing is we see that the controls you have in place seem to be adequate. The other thing we look at is risk assessment. We look at areas, we assess areas that may have been a problem in the past if there was any. If there's any problems in the past, then we might focus on those areas a little bit more than on some other areas. We look at documents, we do analytical analysis, we compare current year to prior year, we compare it to budget, we ask questions, why, how come, why is it different, why is it the same? Asset liability approach, we want to make sure that the assets that are booked and liabilities are booked in accordance with GAAP. And we also have a peer review, so we also get audited by another CPA firm every 3 years. Matter of fact, ours is coming up this November and December. So they make sure that we're following the correct procedures that CPA firms are supposed to follow. Reports tonight that you received, you got your auditor's report on the financial statements. You got your report on expenditures of federal awards, which is a single audit report. And you got your required communications with the board. The next graph, page 2, is our unmodified opinion. This is the highest level of assurance you can receive on an audit. It says the school's financial records and statements are fairly and appropriately presented in accordance with the county principles generally accepted in the United States of America. Again, the highest level of assurance you could receive on an audit. It's our balance sheet, condensed. I'm going to make one change. On the capital project funds, at the top there should be debt service fund. The capital project funds are not included in non-major government. It's one thing that slipped. It's funny. You go over these things a million times, and there's always something that you catch. Bless you. You can see the general fund assets. One of the biggest numbers there is cash, almost $2 million. Due from other governmental units, $6 million. That's mostly state aid. That's the July and August payments that we accrue as a receivable at June 30th. But it's not received at June 30th. It's received in July and August. And then investments of $3.5 million. So total assets of $11 million in the general fund. Liabilities, some of the biggest numbers there are state aid anticipation note payable, $3.6 million. And accrued salaries payable. That's the July and August teacher salaries of $2.3 million. And it gives us total liabilities of just over $9 million. It gives you a total fund balance of $2.7 million at June 30th. And we'll talk a little bit more about the fund balance in future slides. Special ed program, some of the biggest assets there are due from other funds and due from other governmental units, which would be Wayne County RESA. And under liabilities, there's $491,000. That's also due to Wayne County RESA. And then we have accrued salaries payable, which is again is the July and August teacher salaries for special ed program. That is a zero fund balance fund, and so therefore there's no fund balance in that. The debt service fund, the next column, has cash of $466, has investments of $759. This is simply a holding fund for the money. Millage just comes in for the property taxes, sits in cash, and it pays off the bonds. So it has no liabilities at the time. It has a fund balance of $1.639 million, all restricted for payment of bonds. Just so you know, no funds are in deficit at June 30th. Oops, I think I went too far there. Next graph is the statement of revenue and expenditures and changes in fund balance. For all the funds, revenues and other sources for the general fund was $40.3 million. Expenditures were $39 million. So we had a positive increase to fund balance during the year of $681,000. You add that to the beginning of your fund balance of just over $2 million, and you come up with your 2.7 that we talked about on the first page. The special ed program had revenues of 6.5 and expenditures of 6.5. The debt service fund took in $4.7 million and paid out almost $4.5 million. So we had a positive increase to the fund balance of $197,000. The non-major governmental funds, which includes your cafeteria, your community service fund, and your capital projects fund, had a change in fund balance of a negative $934. That was all money coming out of the capital projects fund, because all the other funds were zero balance. The next slide talks about the balance sheet general fund, very condensed, assets, liabilities. You can see in 18, your fund balance was just over $2 million, and again in 2019, in June 30th, it's $2.7 million. That $2.7 million represents 9.3% of the district's unrestricted revenue. Last year was 6.9%. The state looks at unrestricted revenue because they have it, the Michigan Department of Education minimum requirement is 5%. So last year you were over at 6.9, this year at 9.3. Another way to look at it is that it also represents 6.9% of the prior expenditures. Last year that was 5.2%. You have a goal in your policy that your goal is 10% with the 5% minimum, so you're within that range, but you're not at your goal yet of 10%, but you're getting closer. You went from 5.2 to 6.9. Next graph is the general fund comparison to budget. You can see the original budget was adopted in June of 2018, and the final budget was adopted in June of 19, so a year apart. And then the actual, obviously, is the actual. Obviously, there was a big difference between the final budget and the actual budget. The good thing is that you were under budget on your expenditures, not over budget on your expenditures. I know that that Barb is learning the budgeting tool, so I'm sure next year that that will be a lot closer. But again, you were, in all your categories, in every category, you were pretty much under budget through the whole thing. It wasn't just one area that was under budget. The general fund comparison to prior year, you can see the revenues went down 811,000, but the expenditures went down 1.6 million. So therefore, your variance was 773 from the previous year. So you can see in 18, you had a slight decrease to your fund balance, and this year you had a $681,000 increase. So you're back to building up your fund balance, which is good. Page 8, general fund revenues, including the transfers. You can see the biggest piece of that pie is state revenue, 72.5%. It's 29 million. Federal revenue is at 6%, or 2.4 million. Inter-district revenue is 7% at 2.8 million. 2.2 million of that is that enhancement millage this year. So last year was 2 million, this year it's 2.2 million. I think the first year was like 1.8 million, so it keeps creeping up a little bit each year. Local, the 5.5 million, most of that's property taxes of $5 million. General fund expenditures, including transfers. You can see the biggest piece there is salaries, 48.6%. Employee benefits, 31.4%, then purchase services, supplies and materials, a capital outlay. If you add the employee benefits and the salaries together, that's 80% of every dollar spent in a district is on salary or benefits. It's personnel costs. Another way to look at expenditures is by supporting services and instruction. Instruction is everything in the classroom from salaries to books. That was just over 63%. And support services is everything out of the classroom from principals to building maintenance, and that was almost $13.6 million. The next graph is per pupil analysis of the general fund revenues, expenditures, and transfers. So we take the amount of students divided into your revenues, divided into your transfers. And you can see that starting in 17, things really started to increase pretty good. Over the last 3 years, you've received almost $6 million in enhancement millage. So that's really, there's your your revenue and your transfer and your expenditures went up. I mean, just think where your fund balance would be without that $6 million. Even if you're positive, you would have had to, even if your fund balance was zero, you would have to spend $3 million less over the last 3 years. So that's really important. It's a huge source of revenue for many, many districts now. And you have to make sure that that continues. I think that when that vote comes up again, I think it's 2 or 3 years it's going to be coming up again. So
Wayne County is going to take it to the voters next November.
next November, is that so they, in case it fails, they can do it again?
Correct.
Good idea. Good idea. So
So I would definitely, repeat that again for the viewing audience.
yeah, I think it's really important because
So
it's
it'll come to this board for a vote, and if enough boards in Wayne County vote for it, then we'll go for the November election, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that you almost had no fund balance, and now you have 2.7 million. It's not a coincidence that enhancement millage, so you basically saved half of that enhancement millage you put in your fund balance. So it's really important. You haven't used it all to spend on current operations. You use some to put in the bank, so to speak. So it's really good. You still can do that, and that's what I think you're trying to do. So it's good to build it up to at least your 10% or so. So in case it does go away, or in case funding gets cut, as it did a few years ago in the foundation allowance, I mean, you know, everybody talks about a recession. Well, we're going to have a recession eventually. And so probably that foundation allowance is going to get cut someday. You don't know when, but it's going to happen. So you have to be ready for that, and that's what that fund balance is for, to be ready for that, so you don't have to make immediate cuts. You have a little bit of wiggle room. The next graph is the 10-year enrollment trend analysis. That's not pretty, but it's quite common among public school districts. Very few are going the other way. You were at 5,451 students in 2010. This year we're at 3,542 students. Your student enrollment has dropped by just over 1,900 students, or 35% in the last 9 to 10 years. That's amazing.
Has anyone done a trend analysis on all the school districts as far as charter schools online, if it's due to that or other factors?
I don't know that, but I'm sure it's probably out there somewhere.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the state is, if they're not sharing it with us, I can tell you that right now. That's who would have all access to, I mean, we have access, but you have to go online and do it, every school district to do that, which is over 500, so. The state has it, I don't know that if they have it, they're not sharing that information, I can tell you that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. But I think with that drop, I mean, you know, every student has $1 attached to it, to that student, and to be able to increase that and drop of, you know, enrollment is really a good job. Of course, the enhancement millage helped, but still, you know, you had to really tighten your belts here at Southgate, there's no question about that. Here's the 10-year foundation allowance, which is interesting, because if you see in 2012, it went from 7,500 to just over 7,000, which was a almost $2.4 million drop in revenue overnight. All right, and some of those cuts came mid-year. You didn't know you were going to get the cut until January, which was too late to do anything, because you were already, the budget was in, that everybody was hired, and you were ready to go. When you look at 19, it went up to 78.71, but from 2010 to 2019, that's only a $336 increase over the 10 years, or 4.5%. So that's pretty amazing. So you've had to do more with less. General fund balance, here's a history of your general fund balance. It's no coincidence that in 12 and 13, when the big deficit hit the district, the foundation allowance had decreased, the MIPSERS rate went up, and you had dropping student enrollment. So it was sort of a perfect storm. 3 worst things that could happen to a school district happened to you. It happened to a lot of districts, not just to you. Some might have had more fund balance, and so they didn't go into deficit. So I think it's important to have that fund balance, because in case a perfect storm happens again. I think we have to learn from history, because it repeats itself, it tends to. So I think we have to be careful that, because those are all things that were out of your control to a big degree. Right now you have increasing fund balance, even in the face of declining enrollment and small foundation increases. But you can see right in 2017, when the enhancement millage kicked in, your fund balance started to go up. So it's good, because you used it for the right thing. General fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. This shows you what your peers is. Your peer group is at 11.55%. That was for 17-18. Obviously, we don't have the 18-19 numbers yet. But you were at 4.9% last year, but now you're at 6.88%. So you're getting up there. You're moving towards it. MIPSERS rate history. You can see there, 11 and 12, look where the MIPSERS rate went. And your fund balance went the opposite direction. There's a 56% increase from 2008 to 2019 in the MIPSERS rate. Future challenges. Oops, dropping stuff. State economic and political conditions. Obviously, we have the governor's office is battling with the legislature, so that's always going to be an issue, I think, at least for the next year or so. You have the millage vote coming up, so that's an economic and political thing that's coming up. Retirement rate increases, state revenue fluctuations, enrollment trends, which are down, rising health care costs. Your pension OPEB obligation is over $90 million. Again, that's a future obligation, but it's there. It's a real number, and somebody's got to pay for it. So something the state's paying for. Right now, the obligation is on your books, and that's where it's at, and it's not going anywhere. New accounting pronouncements, because those are always challenging to implement. That's done with my presentation. I do want to say the single audit report that you have in your packet, there were no findings, so I'm not going to go over that. It's a bunch of letters, everything was fine. And then we had no comments in our governance letter. We had no disagreements with management. For Barb stepping in, she did a really good job. We're very pleased. Everything went pretty smooth. She may not think it went smooth, but I think it went pretty smooth. It'll go smoother next year, I think, for Barb. We do appreciate the hard work We know you really worked hard to pull this off. And thanks to Barb and Jill and their staff, everything went really pretty well. Do you have any questions on any of the reports or any comments?
Yeah.
Dr. Pomponio.
Okay, so on the general fund comparison to the prior year, do you happen to know, Barb, what the big lack of expenditures that gave us the increase of the fund, in the general fund?
Which,
Page 4 at the bottom.
Page 4.
We went from 91 in the whole.
general fund comparison, am I missing it? Oh, here it is, general fund comparison to budget. I want to make sure I'm on the right page. I'm sorry.
Channel.
We'll have the slide number.
Page 4 at the bottom.
It'll say the slide
Looking at a
number
different
right
report, though.
Oh, the general fund comparison to prior year,
Oh, to prior year. I was just one slide
2019,
off.
2018.
So I'm sorry, your question again was
The
which,
expenditures went down, so I wanted to know what were those that caused us to go up in the fund
well,
balance?
primarily, we were being very diligent about spending this year. We had basically a freeze on anything that was coming up. We didn't spend, as was noted, the enhancement money, which I believe in previous years, it was all spent on various things. And I think last year we were looking at the reasons why that money was gone. So I think a large part of it is that. Beyond that, I would have to dig into it a little bit further.
Okay,
So we just looked at some things that basically we had money left over in almost all the accounts. And so it added up.
okay, that sounds right. Thank you.
Through the chair. And just to add to that, I'll give you a little detail. 167,000 in basic programs was not spent. 292,000 in instructional services not spent. And there's more detail behind that. 98,000 saved in admin costs. 237,000 in operations, maintenance, and transportation. And then finally, $250,000 not spent in intergovernment payments. That's for some of the grants. They will eventually be spent, but everything above that, so roughly, so 300, 450, almost 500K that didn't get spent, that they were really diligent about.
Okay, thank you. And one other question or concern I had was, you audit year to year, and we had mid-year some issues with the food service budget, and then a prior year with our regular budget. And I was wondering, how are you able to spot those findings or discrepancies if after the fact we see those come to us in our budget? Because it seems that it's always pretty good in the audits, but if we find something later we had. So I was just wondering, were you able to pick up on that or recognize that at all?
In the cafeteria fund this year?
The food service
Yeah, I think the
last
food-
year,
Last year.
yeah. Probably after June, I think it was, but I don't know when you start to audit, but we had some issues or had some,
For June 30th of 18, you mean? Or June 30th of 19?
was 18 or 19?
So on June 30th-ish of 18, we were projected to be about $110,000 deficit. And I think Darlene's question is in regards to how did we not know that that was coming?
I don't know that. I mean, that's just not good budgeting at that point, I suspect. That, I remember, I think we asked a question, I think that, from what I remember, because we would ask that question, I think it was that the food service director wasn't really doing a great job. And so I think that was part of the issue. That's why it lost money or didn't make as much money, I think, as you anticipated. So I think that was the reason that was given to us. But that's what we find out after the fact. But it's not as well. It seems like a lot of big number to you. It's not as big number to us in the total scheme of things. But I know that you didn't get to transfer the money that you wanted to transfer for over. Like this year, how much was the transfer from the cafeteria?
It's about $40,000.
About 40,000, right?
it still wasn't
What
what
you
we were
wanted to be.
entitled to, but
Right.
it's better.
But that's why I was understanding that the food service wasn't being managed correctly by the food service director. That's what I understood. Because I think you have a new food service director, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering if we would see that in your audit at some point, if it's a yearly audit, or if it's just something that, if it happens within that 2 or 3 month period that it wouldn't come in your view for
It might
the
not, no,
audit?
it might not. Because we look at the whole year together combined. So
Okay.
if there's just specific, it sort of, sometimes it sort of, evens itself out. I mean, again, we're comparing last year to this year, we're looking at the budget, and we're asking questions of why it's different.
Okay.
I don't think there was anything that looked, unusual in that you didn't make money, but there was nothing there that pointed out, said, oh, there's something really underhand or anything like that going on. Everything looked okay in terms of that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If I can add to that, Darlene, just to let you know, and the rest of the board members, today in our Finance Committee meeting, we met with, of course, Ms. Pastor and Ms. Wilson, and there's going to be some controls in place where we'd be able to catch those. We're looking at a couple different reports that we'll see on a quarterly basis where we can help identify when those problem areas are coming, and we can attack it a little better, and you'll get more information on that. Some of the questions that are coming up are things that we've already covered in that meeting.
Okay.
So maybe we can get them a copy of this handout, too.
Sure, I can send it in the Friday update.
Thank you.
I think,
Sounds
too, I
good.
think when you talk about the reporting the quarterly, that's just looking at your budget numbers to see what the actuals are, what your budget is, what's anticipated to come, and that's just how close do you look at that.
And that's not really the function of the audit, right? The
No.
audit is to make sure we're following generally accepted accounting.
Exactly. And I mean, we do ask what compared to budget, oh, why did you lose money this year? You said you were supposed to make money. We ask that question, we do ask it,
Right.
but,
Yeah, I'm just curious, just,
yeah,
thank you, I appreciate it.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Tim.
Any other questions? All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, that takes us to the consent agenda, which consists of minutes from October 8th, 2019 regular meeting and HR update. I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda as,
As presented.
yeah,
All right.
thanks.
All right, I have a motion by Dr. Pomponio. Is there support? Support. Supported by Mr. Green. Any discussion on consent? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Action item number 1, approval of out-of-state overnight field trip request. This year, Joe?
You're being asked to approve an overnight and out-of-state field trip request for students taking French or Spanish and parent chaperones to visit France and Spain in the summer of 2021. Please see the special trip request form for more details.
Okay. Any questions for staff? All right, seeing none, we'll bring the discussion back to the table, and I'll entertain a motion on action item number 1.
Make a motion to approve the June 23rd to July 1st, 2021 overnight and out-of-state trip request for students to attend France and Spain.
Okay, I have a motion by Dr. Pomponio. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Mr. Estheimer. Any discussion on the item? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, action item number 2 is the approval of a 5-year copier lease.
So we are asking you to approve the 5-year, 60-month lease on 14 Sharp MXM 905s. The current lease with Marco for 14 Canon IR 8295 copiers is expiring in December of 2019, and Marco has made a proposal to renew our lease for 14 Sharp MXM 905 copiers at a monthly savings of $3,236.08. The total duration of the lease is 60 months. Please see copier printer recommendation in your board packet for further information.
Any questions for staff? Dr. Pomponio.
So I know that they're giving us a discount and they're wanting us to renew it, but were we able to get any comparisons at this point in time to see if it's, because I know it's a large amount
Yes. The information for the pricing that we got was from an organization called Sourcewell, and it's similar to what we just used for cafeteria. It was a different company, but it satisfied the bid requirements in the state. It's actually, I believe, housed in Minnesota, but it satisfies those bid requirements, guaranteeing it's the lowest pricing available. So, yeah, so that's why, you know, if you take a look at the documentations attached, it's almost unbelievable to get
Yeah.
brand-new copiers for that. Oh, believe me, I've asked over and over, you sure?
Right.
So this is the pricing that we were given, and there is some, Marco had a service costs that were included in there before, in addition to the actual copiers, which increased the cost. That pricing is going away, and it's just the cost of the copier leasing. All of that's included now.
Okay, so they'll be able to come out and service it.
It's all included.
Okay, because that was a big fee or a big expenditure in the past for our
Yes.
machines, so, yeah, that's good,
And
thank you.
so, I mean, it's really a really good opportunity. They just had some really good deals going with Sharp.
Okay, sounds good, thank you.
So regardless of the usage with the ink, that's all covered?
Ink is included. Paper, we get so many copies, I'm trying to recall off the top of my head, it was like 11 million copies.
Staples are not included,
Right,
but
yeah, it does say 11 million impressions per year. And my recollection was that everything was included, including these paper cut licenses, which is the software.
Thank you.
How many copies have we been averaging?
I don't think I have that right here.
Impressions, does this fall under that?
it's pretty close to our average right now.
Okay.
Actually, I do. It looks like the 12-month average was 947,672 is what we had before.
Okay.
And I'm looking on this last page
Jason.
where they were giving us comparison.
Oh, okay. So Marco was the lowest proposed price on, through the consortium, is that
Yes.
Is that what it was?
Well, the Sharp copiers are,
the Sharp copiers?
yes,
Okay.
that's provided by Marco.
Oh, I see. So we didn't put this out to bid and get prices on it, we just went through the,
They came and met with us and brought us the Sourcewell information, which they say satisfies that requirement.
We have a
And we
letter
did investigate
to
that.
certify.
it satisfies the requirement if we want to use it, but we could also bid out and see if we could beat the price, right?
And we did not. We've worked with this company for the last 5 years. They came in way under what our prices are. I did require them to bring the certification that it does meet our bid services. And Sourcewell is, I believe, the same company that bids the food service things.
So they came in under their own price,
Yes.
so we don't know what somebody else's price would be for
Correct.
similar services. When does this end?
December. They,
What were we gonna do if they didn't come to us, what were we gonna do? In a month, in 6 weeks, what were we gonna do?
well, this was initiated like months ago, months and months and months ago, and we were trying to get a mutually agreeable schedule to be able to meet with them and to be able to have Ms. Pastor be there as well. And so, yeah, we had been in the process of working with them.
But we didn't get any backup bids or pricing or anything?
We did not.
And there's nothing through Wayne Risa?
No. So Sourcewell is part of the consortium bidding. So, I mean, I said the same thing to Barb. Doesn't make any sense to me. How are we going to save $3,000 a month? I have to meet with these people. I don't believe them. I don't believe salesmen. So I made them bring all this documentation. I looked over at it. Basically, they're trying to get us to pull ahead, kind of pull ahead leasing when you do with your car
Right.
type of thing. So I don't know how we're going to get a better deal, to be honest with you. so I don't have all the materials. They are the largest service provider of major copiers in the United States at this point. So they brought me a big packet of stuff and all this information, and so I do believe this is the best price, and it's a large cost savings to us, so
But I get it, but it's a cost savings above what they're currently charging us.
that's correct.
And I'm a little, I don't know, bothered, I guess is the word I want to use, that we're 6 weeks before this runs out, and you guys have been dealing with this for months. I would have loved to have known this months ago, and maybe gone out and got some other bids prior to them telling us that they're the best price, and then they meet the
The bid
bid requirements. Yeah, I would have preferred us to at least talk to some other people to find out. And then here we're gonna commit ourselves for 5 years.
Barb, are you saying that Sourcewell has information on other companies as if we were to accept bids? 'Cause I'm unclear about that.
I'm not familiar with how that works, but other than I've been told that Sourcewell goes out and does all the bidding. I don't know if they provide us with those bids so that we can see. But they're supposed to be certified to be guaranteed to be the lowest pricing that they bring to us. So I don't know if we can go to them and say, let me see the bids.
But
you
we
know.
didn't go to Sourcewell and get this information. Marco brought it to us, right?
Yes.
Am I the only one that seems odd, or
That's what I brought up. I said, did we go and get bids?
maybe I'm the crazy one here, I don't know. It just seems odd to me that the low bidder brought it to us and said, we're the low bidder. And we're gonna beat our own price by this much if you renew with us for 5 years. I don't even know if we're gonna be using copiers in 5 years. I mean, everything could be emailed and paper doesn't exist anymore. I don't
Well,
know.
the kids use it for their online stuff from the teachers use. They always print out stuff. I know that.
Yeah, That's
Teachers are
today.
always printing out stuff for the classes, but yeah, that's what
But
my
5 years
concern
ago, if I told
was.
you my kid was gonna have a phone that could bring up Google in his hand in class, I'd have told you you're crazy. But that's what he's got. So I don't know. This seems like a long time to commit to something without any other backup on it.
Through the chair. So what harm is there in getting a couple competitive bids? Or other companies that do this as well? Is there any harm, any cost to us that we should know about?
So these are sort of the same questions that I asked Barb when she brought me this pricing and asked all these questions, and because this is typically done in the business office, obviously it's a business expense. So besides time, and I don't know that there is cost.
How long was our last lease?
5 years.
So 5 years
For those
ago.
14 copiers, I believe there's a staggered set of copiers as well. I forget
For
how many
old ones
exactly
and then
we
a new
have,
one.
but that one will also be around 5 years. So
this
we have,
company's buying back their, the old units, and then they're covering cost to switch the current electrical. I'm not sure, I mean, obviously, we wouldn't know unless we asked, but I'm not sure that another company would be buying back, used copier, so there could be some, that's $9,100 of it, the total. I mean, that affected that $3,000 savings, It's not like they're writing us a check for $9,100, but.
My concern was the pricing per month, but, because I don't know what's out there, the other bidders, but I just now was aware of the 60 months. I was looking at the price, and I didn't even think about the 5 years, but if we'd been doing 5 years, my main concern is just getting the bids to make sure in the market that we're getting the best price.
Well, if I remember right, we were in a bad position 5 years ago because of the position we were in for the copiers before that. Wasn't
They
it
had to
some,
limit-
wasn't it some weird thing where?
They had to limit the amount of copies that teachers had to.
Well, we were paying on like broken copiers or something
Yeah,
like
because the
that.
lease was almost up, and we had broken
This is like right when,
copiers.
this is like right when I started.
Yeah.
And there was some weird thing where we were paying for like we were paying a lease on broken copiers, and then we had to get in a new company. And I think that's when we brought Marco in, but we were kind of off-footed is what happened.
So Marco wasn't the original bid, it was. Governor Business Solutions, and Marco bought Governor during.
Well, whatever company we're with now, I think we didn't have a strong place to negotiate from because of the bad deal we were in before that.
And I can't speak to what happened 5 years.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
like
it
right around
was.
the time I started, we were
Yeah, I
in
was
some kind of
here.
a bad deal and trying to come out of that. So that's why we got into the deal we did, which was maybe not a great deal. I don't know.
And this is another issue. I don't know if we delay this to get, I mean, this has to be signed within 3 days, according to their contract. So if we went out to bid,
Well, if it's the lowest bid and we can go to it any time,
well, I don't know
it
if.
shouldn't be time constrained, right?
Well, no, they had to get an extension on the original proposal from the company because we exceeded, the number of days that a proposal is good for. So they went and they got an extension on it. And I'm trying to see what October 25th now is the new deadline.
With work to be completed by November 30.
So
And
when I got this information, I tried to make some phone calls just out in, companies to find out, but I couldn't in time for this meeting, but I don't know what the going rate is with other districts too. I have calls out, I just didn't have it back in time.
Well, if you delay the process, is there an increase in the cost on the current printers you're paying for?
You don't know that. You don't know if they're gonna come back with the same bid.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
It's a gamble.
They could come back and say, no, that deal's not good anymore, just like any other deal.
But in the original
Correct.
agreement, was there, after the lease ran out, what is the cost that it increases to?
We don't know, because we didn't get any other prices on anything. We just had them come to us and say,
No, he means if the current contract runs out, what,
oh,
If you held off on this
Well, I don't
to get
know.
other bids?
Well, we got an extension for this deal, so they might come back and say more, so we don't know that.
Yeah, I don't know. And in the meantime, it's just like when you turn in your car, you're losing the months that they were going to pay off the previous leases. And I don't think, they threw in some other perk things like the $3,000 for the electrical upgrade and what's that, Aquas, the 2 Aquas boards.
2 interactive whiteboards.
Yeah, that they were gonna-
I think we understand all that. The point that Mr. Craig is trying to make is, they're bidding against themselves. How do we know that other companies aren't gonna give us this same deal?
Right.
So I guess it goes back for me, I don't know if we really answered this question, is why was this brought to us this late?
yeah, that's kind of where I was at with this is, I mean, what would any other copier company give us on this same exact thing? If this is a state, if this is a Wayne Risa or a consortium pricing, then it shouldn't go away on the 25th. Do you know what I'm saying? If they go to that consortium and they say, here's our price and this is what we do, why does that go away on the 25th?
Well, I
It's
think,
slightly confusing to me.
well, because they'd already made us a proposal back in August.
But they shouldn't have to make us an individual proposal because they've already said, we're willing to do this. That's why you don't have to go out and bid this, is because we're willing to do this at this price. Why would that change or go away? It doesn't make sense that it satisfies the bid requirements, yet it can go away and disappear on the 25th?
Only because of the early lease termination. There's some other factors in there that make
Right.
that number go up, change. But as far
Well,
as the
but
deal.
what are we talking, $30,000 over 5 years? That's,
As far as the deal.
I mean, it's
you're right.
$500 a month. That's
Contractual
I don't want
amount
to get
should
into a
be the
bad
same.
deal over $500 a month. I
So-
guess that's my question.
Just looking at this, I've been in the electronics business in the past. Those of you who know me well, I've been a salesperson or a BD person for more than a day. And some of the terminology I see here looks horribly familiar and what one might get from someone who's interested in closing a deal. So my question, I had 2 questions. One is, did we look at a 3-year deal rather than a 5-year, or a 4-year deal rather than a 5-year? Because the rate of change in this stuff is big, right? You guys know that, you've seen it. So did we look at a 3-year deal too? And the only reason I'm asking is things may change and there may be a better deal at the end of that rainbow. And I don't even know the answer to that question, but did we look at 3 as well as a 4?
No, we did not.
My thoughts would be, unless the Sourcewell thing is a guaranteed, they've already got, there's 4 other bids behind that number that we know we've got the best bid. If that's what this consortium thing is, then we've got the low bid. But I don't think that's what I'm hearing though, right?
Well, yeah, and it didn't even feel like we went and got that. It feels like they brought it to us and said, oh, by the way, your deal with us is ending, but we've supplied this pricing via Sourcewell, so you don't have to go out and get any other bids. You can just, this satisfies your requirements, and this is the price. And it's not a bad deal because we're saving money, but is it the best deal?
My other question, can I ask you this? I know some do, but how prevalent is Google Classroom in all the districts for teachers?
Oh, I don't know the percentage, actually.
Some secondary folks use it. You can go there yet, but there are definitely some people who utilize it, but not enough to.
But in 5 years, in 2 years? I mean, we're looking, these companies aren't stupid. They do their homework too. I mean, teaching is heading toward Google Classrooms and stuff, where you're doing stuff online, you're putting assignments online, you're dropping assignments online.
right,
And as
yeah.
time goes on, that's going to become more and more prevalent, I can guarantee it, which means you're going to need less and less copies. So there's a reason they want a 5-year deal.
Well, and we're getting, how many is it, 11 million a year?
Yes.
And we're only using 947,000?
Per month. That's the 12-month average.
Oh,
We're
that's
actually
the 12
over.
month.
We did the math over here.
Oh, that's the monthly volume, okay, sorry.
But keep in mind, July and August.
Right. But it's still the 12-month average. The average. That's what it says on here. Not the 10-month average. It says 12-month average. So we're still $300,000 or 372,000 copies over every year, which isn't,
There are other
when you
companies
do
that
the
have
math,
a
which we did,
2-year or
it's like
3-year.
$1,600 a year, which is $100 a month. I mean, to me,
It's,
we did it over here a few minutes ago, so to me, that's not the issue. My issue, I kind of go back with Mr. Lamos, is we look into a 3-year deal, because this might be obsolete in 4 or 5 years of, in a lot of different ways, to have that many copies needed, the cost, and to be locked into that, and without other bids, I just don't, if they gave us a bid in August, why didn't we see it in August?
Through the chair? My thoughts are this. I don't know if a 3-year deal is good or if this 5-year deal is good or bad. I've got no clue. But if we follow a bid process of some kind where we know we're getting honest bids from whomever, and I'm not saying they're not honest folks, that's not what I'm implying. But if we don't have other direct bids or bids through this consortium that are valid, then I think I'd respectfully ask you guys to go do that. And a few phone calls tomorrow might surface. If you call a few copier distributors that can provide this kind of equipment, and I'm sure they'll turn around a quote in pretty short order. My recommendation is we go back and look at it again, get 2 or 3 bids that you can compare, and you make a decision whether it's a 3 or 5 year. I have no idea what to recommend there, but that's what my recommendation
See
is.
the bids. Put my man on the spot right here.
Yeah, I don't
We
feel like I
we
have
see your
enough
bids all the
information.
time. Like, we know why we're getting what we're getting. We don't see any other bids from here. We're just blindly accepting what they're telling us.
I get it with the food service equipment, right? Like, they go and they say, okay, this refrigerator through this consortium is this much money. But we go to that consortium and we say, we need a refrigerator, and we go to them and we get the lowest source pricing and we buy the refrigerator. This was different. They brought this to us and said, hey, we're the lowest bid on this and you're running out, and I don't know, it just seems a little
I agree.
strange to me.
So we can either do one of 2 things.
But I don't want to harm us in delaying either. I don't want to, you guys feel like
So
we would
can
be,
either call the question or vote.
well, do you feel like, I guess I want to know from staff, do you feel like we would be harming ourselves in delaying this, or do you feel like we could get a better price, or at least this price if it wasn't at the
And I
next
can't
meeting?
answer that. I do know he had to go back and already try to get us a new proposal. I don't know what was involved in that. We've had a long-term standing relationship with them. They have provided excellent service to us, and, we just kind of felt like, well, look at this savings each month. we'll get brand-new copiers for that, which, of course, 6 years is kind of a long time to have a copier, so we
Yeah,
are, there's a reason. If we chose not to do anything, those copiers we can purchase for $1 each, because what
They're
they
so
value
old,
them
yeah.
at.
Yeah, they're so old.
Yeah, they're so old, so, I guess, again, I am new at this, and my understanding is, when they have a company like this, Sourcewell, they've done all the bidding work for us. Now, I understand your point that you're saying, how do we know that's what Sourcewell is really coming back with? I don't know that. I'm assuming that's what they gave me. But, like I said, they've thrown in some additional perks and, like the $650 per copier to give us back on them. And the Aquas boards and extra copies. That's why you'll see 11 million copies. Those are additional copies than what we currently have. Because they looked at our usage and saw that at the end of every year, we had to pay for extra copies. So they decided it would be in our best interest to bump it slightly.
Because we're going over in miles, basically,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
No, I kind of understand the reasons why some of it's here. Copiers are a much more common thing than kitchen equipment, I think, right? Like, there's not a lot of places that do kitchen equipment, so I realize why we use them for food service. But everybody uses copiers, and are these ones that are fax machines and scanners also? Or are they just, are these printers? So they're sort of printer copiers, do they also scan and fax?
Yes,
Yeah, they
Do the ones we have right now do that?
yes.
They do everything, right? So, is that added into part of the count? When you scan something, does that go into the copier count? Like if I sit here and I scan
Good question. I don't know
10,000 pages, does that get into my count? I guess I don't know, but, that's all stuff I want to know from a bid, because this is a competitive market right now, especially with the way technology's moving. And that's what's just got me concerned. So I guess the question is as a board, do we want to risk maybe running a slightly higher price for the chance of getting a better one, or what do we want to do?
I think there's a lot of companies out there that have copiers to offer school districts, and I feel uncomfortable with the 5-year, with all the Chromebooks and different technology that we're getting. Now, I don't know what the future holds, but for 5 years, they get older quicker, and who knows what the quality, the parts, and I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable with the 5-year on this one.
Through the chair. I don't think we should get so prescriptive for us sitting up here about whether it's white or black or scans or doesn't scan or is fast or slow. What I think we should do is maybe the question is if the administration can figure out whether this is a Sourcewell bid and that it indeed is a bid that's in front of 5 others that were higher than it, then we probably got what we wanted, right?
That's what I thought.
Jill and Ms. Wilson are perfectly capable of determining what kind of copiers to get or whatever the devices they are that they need. That's the only thing I'd like to make sure that this is indeed the Sourcewell price that is the front runner to 4 or 5 others or whatever the case may be that are higher. And if we can determine that, then I think we've got our questions answered, at least mine.
So am I hearing we want to put this off?
So motion to table,
So this,
or would you prefer to call the question?
well, we haven't made a motion. There hasn't been a motion made, so we don't have to make a motion on this. We can,
Good.
without a motion made, we can simply not take action on this and hold it over till the next meeting, and
Okay.
staff will bring it back at the next meeting. So, but we don't need to table it, it can just be,
Flat.
yeah, we're not making any action on this, and, or taking any action on this, and it would be brought back to us at the next available opportunity.
Okay.
If that's what I'm hearing from the group. Okay. Are you guys clear on what we're looking for
Yes.
next time? Okay. All right. Action item number 3, approval of the preliminary qualification of bonds.
So you're being asked to approve the preliminary qualification of bonds as stated below. So just to remind you, Rob Kukoski, myself, a lawyer from Troon, Carrie Blanchett of PFM, and another representative from Platte Moran, Paul. Paul met with Treasury on October the 9th. They had some changes and tweaks. So for example, things like how many teaching stations in a building, and I don't know why the state doesn't count this, but if you have a classroom that's dedicated to special education students, that doesn't count as a teaching station. So we had to make a few adjustments like that, but we were completely within the percentages as far as building usage. And so what you see is the updated version as provided, the changes after, oh my gosh, I forgot her name from Treasury, told us to make, so. Thank you, Carol Dunsmore.
And we're still making the necessary changes and updates to North Point? That's in here too?
This includes, yes, it's,
Okay.
all the details are listed
Yeah,
by
stuff
building.
like that.
So I'm not sure what you mean by necessary, but we have some roofing,
It's our
some
building, so
HVAC,
we
some
have to,
electrical.
yeah, they're
Yes.
included as well, even though we're not,
Yes.
we don't have students in here.
Any questions for staff?
Look at Rob staring at us. He thinks we're a lively bunch today.
Wish we was action item two.
This has to be overnighted in the morning if it's approved tonight, so no rush.
She's saying, like, let's not make this another huge discussion.
Sure. All right, no questions for staff? All right, we'll bring it back to the table.
I do have one
Oh,
question.
go
So
on.
are there some changes that we should be aware of that are significant in any way? If you could just identify what they are.
Yeah, actually, all the changes that were made were mostly grammatical numbers, depending on if we had a typo on a math equation that was in there that she catches. I mean, she goes detail by detail. If you have wrong wording, if you say repair something, you can't repair something with a bond. So you have to replace masonry work or replace damaged masonry. You can't say repair masonry. So, I mean, she looks line item by line item through everything, and that was a lot of the changes. Misspelling of words, some square foot numbers that didn't transpose correctly, didn't round correctly or whatever, throughout the different formulas and spreadsheets that are in here. So it was just correcting all those. None of the scope changed, anything related to that. So the scope that we had presented to you guys in early September, that came from the bond committee, is all in here. It was divided out into the two series. We kind of made it, had to split up with the two series, so we divided that all up in here. And yeah, nothing scope-wise changed from what we had presented to you in September.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll bring the discussion back to the table. I'll entertain a motion on action item number 3.
Everybody's looking at me.
Green.
Mr. President,
Green.
I make a motion, therefore it resolved, the Southgate Community School District Board of Education has, 1, resolved to apply for preliminary qualification of bonds by the state treasurer for the purpose of financing the school construction description of this application. 2, that said application is presented to the state treasurer for action prior to the official action of the Board of Education calling the election on said bond issue. 3, resolved that this Board of Education will present a final qualification to the state treasurer for qualification of their bonds after this bond issue has been approved by the electors of said district. 4, read this application and approved all statements and representations contained herein as true to the best knowledge and the belief of the board. And 5, authorize the Secretary of the Board of Education to sign this preliminary application and submit same to the state treasurer for the review and approval.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Green. Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Dr. Pomponio. Any discussion?
I just wanted to say to those listening is that the details that I asked about and Rob was kind enough to respond to, we've been working on for months, so this is something we've gone over and over and over, and I just wanted to make sure there are no anomalies that were changed by the state, so, and it sounds like there weren't, so that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Seeing no other discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Any employee representatives who would like to speak tonight? All right, seeing none, information announcements from the board. Dr. Pomponio.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Parks and Rec Department will have a Downriver Hockey Club first annual Paint the Rink, October 26th, 9 a.m. And the Southgate Historical Foundation received old signage from McCann School that the district saved for years, donated to the foundation. They thank the Board of Education for the donation. It cleaned up very nice and will be displayed for the community in the near future. And November 7th through the 11th, I will be at the Fall Conference in Traverse City to take some refresher classes and to bring back some information from the expo, and that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Pastor.
So on Thursday, November the 7th, we're going to host a literacy dance party for third graders and an information session about read by grade 3 for our third grade parents. We're going to host it at Davidson Elementary, or Davidson Middle School. We have a volunteer DJ for the students. We have a blow-up dinosaur. The parents will receive a book and some information regarding the good cause exemptions and some other things in the law. So we're looking forward to some good attendance at that time to get the information to those third grade parents who may be affected by the retention law.
Time?
It's from 6 to 7.
What date was that?
November the 7th.
Thanks.
We've had the pleasure in the last week of giving $20,000 from the Southgate Education Foundation to 24 recipients. We had over $37,000 worth of grants and a committee that consisted of Dr. Darlene Pomponio, Phil Roush, Kim Cuspa, Elizabeth Mullins, and Georgianne Miller met for about 2.5 hours and they came to the consensus of who to award those grants to. And we sort of did a publisher's clearinghouse type event on Monday where we went around with balloons and some candy and gave them big checks and took some pictures.
I took the checks back.
And then we, unfortunately, they were dry erase big
Right.
checks, but we had fun with the 20,000. So we're looking forward to that annual event. And just to remind the public that that's going to be on April 30th of 2020. So
24
Thank
for
you.
the building or the teacher.
Anyone else? All right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn by Mr. Estheimer. Is there support?
Support?
Supported by Mr. Lamas.
we need to
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Teresa?